Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kent Holm, Douglas County Environmental Services, and chair of the Solid Waste Working Group. Appreciate your attendance today. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers, and very happy that you can join us. I think you'll be, there's some interesting stuff we're going to talk about today. And again, just very much appreciate everybody being here. Just some housekeeping items. If you would please put your name and affiliation in the chat. We are recording the meeting, and I do that mainly so we can get a meeting summary together, and I'll push that out to the entire group when we're done. During the presentations, please put questions in the chat. I'll facilitate that, and then we'll get to the questions kind of when we get to the end of our presentations. If you are speaking, if you come off mute and are speaking, please turn on your camera so we can see you. If you can keep your camera on at all times, that's even better so that the presenters can see you. And when not speaking, please keep your microphone muted. So with that, I am going to, let's see, are we at 2? We are at 2. So I'm going to get going. One of the things that I want to do is just to establish some context. The Solid Waste Working Group, even though we're having national speakers and so on and so forth here, we have kind of a Metro Omaha area focus. And these focus areas are in our integrated solid waste management plan update. Today, we're going to hear a lot about market development for recyclables, but we're also going to kind of touch on all of these other areas. So just from a context standpoint, that's kind of how this fits into the bigger picture. One of my favorite words, and this is when I look at Heidi, I think of this word all the time. Collaboration is something that we really can use to our collective benefit. We have folks that are in the room that at last check, I think I had over 70 people that were indicating they were going to be on the call today. That's 70 different perspectives. That's 70 different thoughts and ideas, skill sets, knowledge, resources that we can use to help identify and solve problems. So think about collaboration and how we can help each other solve the problems that we're dealing with every day. And I got to leave with the Marshall Goldsmith quote, "What got you here won't get you there." Especially in government, we tend to get in a rut and we tend to say, well, we've always done it that way before. We have to think outside the box. We have to collaborate, and we've got to sometimes do things that are different than what we're used to and out of our comfort zone. So with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Heidi Sanborn, who's the Executive Director of National Stewardship Action Council and the Stewardship Action Foundation. And Heidi is going to, I titled this Economics of Solid Waste Management. Heidi's going to touch on a number of different things, and I think you will enjoy her presentation. With that, Heidi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much.
I've stopped sharing. Yeah, so you can go ahead and share yours. There you go.
Okay, can you see it? Okay.
I can.
I will start at the beginning. Well, thank you so much for being here. Very, very glad to be back with you all. I think most of you know me, but maybe some of you don't. So I'll get into my background quickly. I'm Heidi Sanborn. I did start these two organizations, the National Stewardship Action Council. We just hit 11 years actually this week, and the Stewardship Action Foundation, which is 6 years old, a 501c4, a 501c4 and a 501c3 that advocates and educates to attain a circular economy in the United States. But I've been doing the work my whole life on waste management. I started as a little kid with a recycling route for newspapers. I do not like waste. I do not like litter. And I think there's more efficient ways, like Earth has shown us, that we can keep things in a closed loop circle and keep regenerating the planet for the generations that follow. So again, we have a C3 and a C4, and I want to thank Kimberly. She is added to our C3 board to educate for a responsible circular economy, and I'll get into what that means. But we advocate on the other arm with the C4. Our unique role is that we bridge policy, industry, and environmental advocates all across the country. We ensure fair policy development and frameworks that reward leadership and not punish innovation. We are in the room when rules are written and usually the first to write the rules. We've been at the tip of the spear for my entire career, basically, since we started this path down in 20 years ago. I did with the California Product Stewardship Council, and when I worked at the Cal Recycle, I was advisor to the chair of the Old Waste Management Board. And we're not a watchdog group, but we do make sure that our policies, we see them all the way through and help implement them to make sure that everybody's working together. And collaboration is my favorite word. I think what I call now radical collaboration is needed more than ever because we don't have the resources we need to do what we've got to do. So we can't be inefficient by having duplication. We need to work together to lift all boats. But this is my favorite analogy. People tend to remember this. When we get to the waste management hierarchy, I've always thought of it this way since I was a little kid. If the bathtub is overflowing and you run to do something about it, what is the first thing you're going to do? Is it grab the mop or is it turn off the spigot? It's turn off the spigot. You turn that off first, then you mop because nothing's being added to the floor. But we don't do that in waste management. The spigot has just gotten more open over the years, and what's coming at us is more dangerous than ever, but we're just mopping. We haven't been turning off the spigot. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough resources. So this is why something has to change in our entire system. We evolved from picking up apple cores, leather shoes, and cotton clothing to the what I call horrible hybrid mess that we have now of chemicals and plastics and things that have never, and all different kinds of resins, things that are, all in the same product. We can't even separate them all. So we have to go upstream if we're going to have a cost-effective system. And that's what producer responsibility is about. But it also gets to the costs. So what is a circular economy? I just want to make sure we start with that baseline. Ellen MacArthur Foundation uses this definition. I tend to agree with it, that we design waste and pollution out of the system first. That's turning off the spigot. That is otherwise known as source reduction. Then what's left, we keep in motion. So we recycle the stuff that's industrial products and we compost the organics. Anything that doesn't fit in those two categories, we have to destroy, like hazardous waste. That's not circular, it never can be, unless they can recycle it to be reused somehow, which is rare. And then we have to go back and fix the natural systems we've harmed, and we've harmed everything, including our own bodies. We're full of chemicals. The latest study showed that even human breast milk in the United States has over 240 toxic chemicals in it. I don't know if you know that, but that's literally, and we're seeing cancers in younger and younger people now. And I do believe it's a lot of through the exposures that we're having through all these products. We need to decouple economic activity from the consumption of finite resources. The economics have to work. And right now, we just keep expanding growth, but we're doing it with finite resources. And at some point, that's not going to work. So how do we make sure that we go circular? And we can, for batteries are a great example in critical earth minerals. If we don't recycle them, we are reliant on other countries who have those minerals because we don't have them all to hopefully sell to us. But what if they get mad at us? Like China did at Japan, and they turned off the spigot and stopped selling them rare earth minerals so they could make electronics, which was their number one export. These things can be used literally in international relations. Producers of products make the design and marketing decisions that determine the largest part of the end of life costs. So what materials is it made out of? How is it designed? Can it be easily recycled? Can you easily remove the battery from the electronics so you can recycle the electronic without having the electronics facility explode? These are the things that all come to play and why going upstream to the producers is where this all starts. They make the design and marketing decisions. But it's only one tool in the toolbox. There are many policy approaches that can be employed, and there's also other non-policy options, obviously, that can be employed. But EPR is one of the key policy tools that has been used around the world to get upstream and turn off that spigot. So, success in sponsoring bills, we've done a lot of bills, everything from banning something from sale, like you did in Nebraska with the laughing gas cylinders. I'm very proud to say we copied you, and we have a bill now in California's legislature that's only lost 2 votes so far. We're going to a second House appropriations next month, and we based it off your bill in Nebraska. So thank you for that. Your battery bill was EPR. We've done first in the nation on paint care expansion. It's all paint products, including arts and crafts paint. Mercury lamp, we stopped selling them in California because why do we put mercury in glass and sell it to the public and make it hazardous? We've got LEDs. We don't need those anymore. Again, that adds toxics to the waste stream. Truth in labeling laws. That adds a lot to cost. If people buy something and think it's recyclable because it has a chasing arrow or says it's recyclable, they put it in the recycling bin. And then you have to sort it out. That's a cost. Or if they say it's compostable and they put it in the composting bin, then it's contamination for the organic stream. So labeling is critically important, not only to driving the market, because if you're lying to people on the label and they buy it thinking it's one of these things, but it wasn't, then they're literally driving the wrong market. So that's a huge problem and something we've been addressing in California and other states. But hazardous products are the ones I've been really focused on recently because they really do affect costs the most. They're very expensive and they affect the safety of our workers. We are now the fourth most deadly industry in this nation. It should not be that way. And a lot of it is because we have a very toxic waste stream and products that get in there and explode and start fires. So I just want to say I've been doing this a long time. I'm based in California, but I'm from the Midwest and the Northeast. I understand every state is different. I understand every law is different. Every product is different. They're all different. Everything has to be customized. But big things can happen when people work together. And if you don't know these people, but we've got everybody from the American Chemistry Council to the Chamber of Commerce to Oceana, all working together to pass the California packaging law. So I just want to show you that these kinds of partnerships can happen and do happen to make big things happen. And because that happened, now we have 7 states that have passed these laws on packaging EPR. And I want to get to the cost because this is a big thing a lot of people are concerned about. You have to look at the life cycle costs. What producer responsibility does is when you put the cost in the cost of the product, you send the market signal to the customer. This is the cost for the full life cycle of this thing. If you don't do that, you externalize costs, meaning if the product is sold and you say, oh, jeez, I just lost my train of thought for a second. I barely got to eat this morning. If you buy a product and it doesn't have the full cost, then you're ending up externalizing that onto local governments or the environment to collect it. And that is not fair. That means the producers make it and make the profit, but they externalize the costs onto a completely different entity to pay those end-of-life costs. When they don't have to pay, they don't really care about end-of-life costs because what is their fiduciary responsibility? It is to shareholders, paying investors back and making the money. So if that's their sole motivation in a C Corp, B Corps are different. You have a reason for them. They literally, that it's not on their radar. As soon as they have to pay the whole life cycle cost, they rethink design. We have many, many examples of this. But one of the big things that we're working on now for the packaging bills is responsible end markets. This is very important because when, again, you externalize the cost of an end of life of a product on, to example, child labor in Sudan, or I'm sorry to say, slave labor in China. We've seen that, the Uyghurs. That's a cost. You're not paying it. The producer isn't paying it, but those people are paying it. So responsible end markets are saying, that's not okay. We're not externalizing those. We're going to internalize that cost of doing business and make sure everybody's doing it to a standard that is fair and reasonable and not overly burdensome to any one group. That's what responsible end markets are. They just had, I just was literally submitting our comments at 10 o'clock last night on these responsible end markets that the Circular Action Alliance, the producer-run organization, has just put out their draft. We think they're basically really good. We caught a couple of mistakes, we think. We shared them with others. We had a whole working group on this. Kent was there. He heard a lot of the discussions. We welcome all of you to join us and be part of those conversations in our packaging working group. But it's very, very important that this is the kind of thing that gets harmonized across the country. And we all agree on what is reasonable for the business, for everybody. So that's a very exciting time. We've never had this before, but the public lost trust in our industry because they found out that our electronics were on the riverbanks of China, or little kids were picking through and burning the plastics off of metals in Sudan. So we're going to get to the bottom of this and fix it, and it's going to be great. Truth in labeling. This is another thing that I've talked about with costs. Nobody should be able to lie to the public on the label, in my opinion. And right now, we've got the Wild West. Pretty much anybody can label anything, and they get away with it. I'm literally working on a bill right now in Congress that we've been trying to pass for, I'm not kidding you, 3 years in Congress. We've passed it in California in 2021, but Washington did it in 2020 to stop lying on the label that wipes are flushable. They're actually plastic. That costs a lot of money when your sewer system backs up, right? It costs a lot of money for your public water agency when they have to pull out these giant fatbergs of fat, greases, and all these wipes that are plastic that, by the way, end up with microplastics in your water. Why were they allowed to label them flushable? Who let that happen? The government does not have a rule on this. We have to pass a law. And I don't think that's right either. Why do we have to pass a law to get them to stop lying? The good news is it's bipartisan. I really hope it passes this year. We're trying really hard. You can see the fatberg to the bottom left. That's what ends up in sewer pipes. That's a huge cost. You're digging up roads. So it's a different type of product, but this is the same point. Labeling. Here we have EnviroCooler. This is to mislead people. It says no, it's biodegradable. Does anyone believe that? It's no microplastics upon degrading. It's recyclable. I mean, you'd think this thing is apple pie. And then you've got your red Solo cup with the chasing arrow, and people think it's recyclable, throw it in the recycling bin, and you have to sort it out because it's not. So there's no labeling standard that's enforced in the United States, really. And it's a huge problem for driving the right market and not externalizing costs. So, for example, this is a cannabis vape in California that was labeled truly disposable, whatever that means. We passed a law that said you can't do that. It has to say it's hazardous and has to go to a hazardous waste facility. But this is the kind of stuff that can happen because then people just throw it in the trash with a battery, a cannabis product, and electronic, which is all shouldn't go in the trash. So the economics of waste, to me, start with safety and fires. If your entire system is on fire, from collection trucks to recycling facilities and sorting facilities to landfills, this is not going to be an affordable system. And it's getting worse by the year. And vapes are a big part of it, and everybody knows that. But it's also things like marine flares. So at the bottom picture, you can see the gentleman at the MRF in UK literally had a marine flare go off in his hand, and you see how close it is to his head? I mean, he is very lucky. He did not get seriously injured there. And then the one above, I don't think I can play it. It's not connected, but that was the back of an Ohio garbage truck that blew out onto the two workers because somebody put an oxygen tank in the garbage truck. It's extremely dangerous, which means our insurance costs are going up, and I've ventured to guess that within years we're going to lose insurance in this industry if we don't get this stuff under control. So that's another cost driver in the economics of solid waste, which is why SWANA and us and many others helped develop this statement urging brands and policymakers to take quick action on the fires. These two trucks in the top left both burned to the ground in California last year. The 240-yarders full of trash. We think it was a battery in there. But this is unaffordable. Our system cannot sustain this much longer. I want to thank you again for all you did with the vapes and the cylinders for gas, the laughing gas, which is no laughing matter. But hopefully we will follow both of you, Nebraska on both of these things in California this year. We have the legislation in process right now. They're both in play. But you can see this vape is not just a vape. And it's not just Watermelon Breeze to try and encourage kids to smoke. It has a video display on it to encourage them to inhale deeper so they get more points. And that not only addicts the children, but now you've got electronic video display, all the things in the waste stream. And again, we were thrilled with Senator Hughes in banning the sale of these like vapes that look like sippy cups and are disguised in schools. Very good work. First, really good work there. I'm going to go quickly, but I'm just going to say that local governments can also impose producers' responsibility to protect public health and safety. It's legally their responsibility in the state country to protect public health and safety. And I helped pass the first ordinance in the country on producers to be responsible for take back of pharmaceuticals. At the time, we had a serious opioid crisis, and it was addicting kids and killing people, and they were flushing it in the water. We couldn't get it out, so it failed. It was very difficult to pass. We got Senator Jackson to write a letter to counties to say, please take action. And then 13 counties passed it in an ordinance. And then it went to the US Supreme Court and was challenged. But here's the cost savings. These are the costs that were externalized onto local governments. The first check we ever saw from the big pharma to one of our local waste authorities just to reimburse for the needles was $64,000 for 1 year. That's a lot of money. That was going to needles that the producers of needles now pay for in California. Only state still that passed it. But I'm trying to get to show you how fast these numbers add up to local government costs. And when you have much better impact on accessibility of drop-off, you're going to get a lot better compliance. We've got these bins all over the state now. Alameda County was sued all the way to the US Supreme Court and won. Pharma was not allowed, they were denied at the Supreme Court, saying that this was local governments couldn't impose these rules. They said yes if it has a public health and safety nexus. These bins are now all over California, I think 900 of them, in pharmacies, hospitals, and sheriff's departments, paid for by pharma. Hazardous waste is everywhere. We've worked on legislation, like I said, paint, thermostats, batteries, mercury containing lighting, a bunch of things. But I want to say this. Changing an economic system and changing the waste management system and how the money flows is not easy. We are doing it. It takes time. It takes tenacity. There are legal challenges. That's normal in the United States. We need to look to harmonize things, but not harmonize bad things. We need to make sure we get the best systems and then we copy them and try to make this as easy as possible for businesses. Or have businesses lead voluntarily without legislation. That's amazing. But the economics of this whole thing start with the design of the product. What is it made out of? And here I'm going to give you one example. HP, when they started voluntarily taking their electronics and their computers back, realized that the major part of their cost of recycling was that they had designed their battery to be taken out by 3 different screws. A human being had a different screw 3 times to get that battery out before they could crush it and recycle it. So what did they do? They redesigned it with that feedback loop of taking it back. They redesigned it to be a pop-out battery. That simple design change saved them almost half of what their recycling costs were. These are the simple things that can happen when producers actually think about end of life. And what we're trying to do is create this radical collaboration amongst everybody in this. I call it passing a baton like in a relay race. That's what a circular economy is. We don't want to drop the baton. We want to pass it quickly. We want to be efficient. That means we all have to talk. And if we're not talking, it's not going to work. So that's where the collaboration comes in. We've got our European friends that even came to America in Arizona a few months ago to talk about sharing their insights. They've been doing producer responsibility and circular economy for 3 decades. We have a lot to learn from them. They want to share. That's hopeful. And I just want to say, I'll move on because I know we've got incredible speakers today. But we have 4 working groups. We're a national organization. We'd love to have you join us. We talk about household hazardous waste, packaging, textile circularity. At the root of all of it is how does the money flow? And that's why I was excited that Kent invited me to speak today, because to me, the reason I like producer responsibility is it gets to turning off the spigot, getting the design changes that we need. Also, if you're interested in helping us remake things in America and supporting America's recyclers, please sign the pledge. You can do it with this QR code. We use this to in the media and share it, but we really are concerned about remaking things in America, keeping the jobs here. And we have lots of supporters from all over the country and hope you will consider joining us. So with that, I will stop and happy to take questions.
Super. Thank you very much, Heidi. That great overview touched on a lot of different aspects of kind of the system and what kind of things are causing us problems. Where do we need to possibly look for some solutions? One, I guess, shameless plug that I will throw in for the Household Hazardous Waste Working Group that Heidi facilitates. That's coming up on August 4th, their next meeting. And one of the things that I had asked for was to have a discussion about how to sustainably fund household hazardous waste collection facilities and so on. So there's going to be discussion on that particular meeting about that. We'll hear from folks in Nebraska, but also some other states that have some different funding models that we might be able to think about. And again, it's all about collaboration and figuring out how we can do things better. So thank you again, Heidi. I don't see any particular message questions in the chat. I had several questions written down, and through your presentation, you answered all of them. So we're good to go there. We're going to transition right now to Megan Schultz-Fontes, who's with the executive director of the Nebraska Northeast Recycling Council, excuse me. And Megan's going to talk to us about procurement. And, well, I'm not going to steal any of her thunder. But Megan is going to talk, I know, a little bit about the portal that they have now for recycled content. And without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Megan. And it looks like you're able to share your screen. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ken, and thank you, Heidi. And thanks everyone for being here. I actually wasn't sure if Kim was next, so that's funny that you slipped up there for a second with Nebraska. But hi everyone, I'm Megan Schultz-Fontes, Executive Director for NERC, or Northeast Recycling Council. I've been here for now, I think 3.5 years and I'm, otherwise new to the industry, but not new to the nonprofit world and world of education and whatnot. So, but such a great industry. For those of you who are unfamiliar with NERC, we're a multi-state nonprofit organization. We're focused on minimizing waste, conserving natural resources, and advancing a more sustainable economy. And we support this work through education, policy, resources, and research, and by facilitating cross-sector collaboration. It's the highlight word I can tell for this meeting, through initiatives like our committees and our annual Rethink Resource Use Conference. We represent 11 state members in the Northeast and about 100 advisory member organizations. Again, as Heidi alluded to, we frequently work with organizations across the US. So please feel free to explore our website if you're not familiar with our resources or events and whatnot. We'd love to engage with you. But I am here today to talk to you about one resource that we have, the post-consumer recycled content material demand hub. So sustainable procurement programs are incredibly important to pulling curbside recyclables through the marketplace because they incentivize the purchasing of products with post-consumer recycled content, and they create demand for these materials. There are many examples of successful procurement programs at all government levels, local, state, and federal, which we highlight in our demand hub, as well as our environmentally preferable purchasing directory. Additionally, there are useful directories that list product and material with PCR content and/or other environmental benefits. They're often aggregated through certification providers such as APR. And APR, I'll talk to you about for a second. They relaunched their Demand Champions program, which is open to both public and private organizations, governments, really any entity. It outlines 3 primary actions which we feature on the hub, which is also aligned with the NSAC Remade in America pledge Heidi just mentioned. The first is committing to PCR use. So whether that's products you manufacture or purchases that your facility or organization is making, and prioritizing certified North American PCR. Second, it's securing long-term supply agreements for post-consumer recycled materials, which helps stabilize the market against fluctuations in virgin plastic prices. We all know it's not a market that operates like, your standard commodities do. The third is to expand PCR adoption in non-standard formats or simply just more difficult to recycle products and materials. APR's program does focus on plastic. So, if that wasn't apparent, just noting that. The Demand Hub, we are trying to look at materials across the board. So if you're starting new, deciding what products to buy with PCR content is obviously an essential starting point. There are a lot of different products: furniture, carts, bins, containers, trash bags, electronics. We have resources on the Demand Hub like our roadmap, which is geared more towards government entities, but could be applicable for really any business. A Q&A guide for working with your state procurement agency, which if you're not yet in touch with your state procurement agency and you're looking to begin a procurement program or build upon it, you really should. Again, it's about talking with one another to get things to where you want them to be and to get things done. We also have EPP, so environmentally preferable purchasing specifications for different materials and products, just as examples that are good reference points. And a lot of those come from other state procurement programs, sustainable procurement programs. So as mentioned, all organizations and government entities are welcome to join the APR Recycling Demand Champion program. It offers free and valuable resources and recognition. It's free to anyone, so definitely check it out. There are other green product directories available on the site: a resource directory, a recon tool manual to calculate the GHG offsets associated with the purchase of PCR products. Here are some examples of the green product directories that we've started to synthesize and aggregate. And then let's see, and I'll put the link in the chat. Our directory offers resources from certification organizations, governments, and others. It's sortable by material or product, but it also is sortable by these entity types as well. Recycled content is prioritized in the material or product significance. However, other benefits may be denoted. So for example, you may be able to find cleaning products, and what those are talking, the environmental or sustainability feature associated with those may not be recycled content, but it might be like non-toxic supplies. So it's just a little bit broader than your PCR content. Lastly, we have an EPP network. It's just really a listserv that we're trying to bring back. So feel free to join by scanning the QR code or emailing my colleague Sophie right here. And that's my email. This is the URL to the Demand Hub. Happy to answer any questions, and I'll throw some links in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan. Appreciate that. I think we probably have time for a question if anybody wants to come off mute. We'll give it just a second here. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody that's banging down the door here. Thank you, Megan, for putting that link in the chat. And I encourage everybody to, if you haven't already, take a look at those resources that NERC has. They represent, it was easy for me to look at them and think, wow, there's a lot of research and time and effort that went into compiling all this. So great resources there. So encourage you to check those out. With that, we're going to switch gears over to Matt Nod. And Matt, I know, wears a couple of different hats. And rather than me trying to figure out which hat he's going to wear first in the discussion, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you explain kind of your background and what you're going to bring to the presentation today.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Kent. I love the fact that we've got California, we've got the Northeast, we've got Michigan, and Full disclosure, I've been to Omaha, and one of the most harrowing plane flights was Denver to Scotts Bluff one time for work. So I'm Matt Nod. I'm with RRS. It's got a bigger name, but we're recycle.com. But this work is really led by a nonprofit based in Ann Arbor called the Ecology Center, and they're really nationwide. And so I've been with RRS since 2019, and before that, I ran sustainability for the city of Ann Arbor for a couple of decades. So I really come at this from the city focus, and I didn't spend a lot of time in the recycling space. So it's really been in the last few years that I've gotten deeper into this. And one of the things the Ecology Center has been focused on is how do we use the huge purchasing power of governments to increase the demand for material that is recycled, non-toxic, all those things that Heidi was talking about. If it's recycled material, but it's got toxics in it, it's not really circular. And so I got involved, and I'm going to give you a little. These are my colleagues that I work with who do all the great work: Tracy Easthope at the Ecology Center, Tanya Summerlin, and again, you add up what governments buy, and it's a really big number. And so there's a lot of power in the ability of governments with some smart thinking and how do we make it easier for the procurement staff who are typically overworked, don't have a lot of extra time or budget to train staff. How do we make it easier to implement these programs in communities? And there are amazing examples all over the country. And so we've tried to pull a bunch of it together. And this is kind of the TLDR, too long, didn't read. And I'm going to touch on the rest of it through a couple of slides. But there's a big national network of cities called the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, a regional network of Great Lakes cities thinking about sustainability. And within that, we found a group of Great Lake communities, cities, institutions interested in sustainable purchasing. So we've worked with them for the past 6 years. Key part is listening to them saying, what do you need? And what we heard was we need a model policy. We need a making the case deck. Give us a whole set of slides that I can pick and choose from to help my elected officials, my internal sustainability group at the city understand why we ought to do sustainable purchasing. Fact sheets, we saw some of those that Megan's got up on her site that I hadn't seen before. So this is another great opportunity for us to share across. Resolutions, what's that resolution a community can pass to commit to eliminating toxics from their purchasing, committing to more recycled content, committing to adopting a policy in the next 6 months. So we built training for the city of Lansing. Lori there has trained 150 staff with online training that's now in their learning management system at the city of Lansing. But she can't really share that with Omaha or Detroit. So we're building a new version of that training that's going to be on a much more accessible platform that we hope is free. And if not free, really cheap. And we think philanthropy will help fund this. And we've also done Michigan has a Michigan Green Communities Network, and they offered a 4-part 2-hour training on sustainable purchasing for small communities in Michigan that don't really have staff to do a lot of this work. So I'm going to touch quickly. I could talk for an hour on what we've got in here, but if you go to the Ecology Center's website, it's a roadmap for sustainable purchasing. The key resources I mentioned, making the case deck, sustainable purchasing language that could go in your solid waste plans, climate plans, resilient plans. Started looking at vendor disclosure forms. We asked vendors to disclose lots of things when they bid on city work. Can we get them to say, I've read the policy and nothing that I'm offering is a problem, or I actually don't know what's in my product, which you ought to know if the person doesn't know whether it's got PFAS or other contaminants. Um, as I mentioned, training coming soon. So this roadmap, it really is a guide that we hope somebody interested in starting a sustainable purchasing program in a city can find what they need. And I will say, again, philanthropy funds a lot of this work. If anyone on the call is interested, feel free to reach out to me, Tracy. Happy to have free conversations about how you might get started, how we can help, do a little bit of hand holding as you start your journey. So all this is available on the website. Again, there is this Making the Case slide deck, which is really powerful. It's about 50 slides, a lot of the fun facts, a lot of good graphics, ways to introduce this concept to an environmental commission, a city council. And I will say, as part of our cohort, we also have folks from the University of Michigan, so big institutions. And it ranges, I mentioned Lansing, but we also have folks from Toronto who participated. So big cities with like 30 staff, they have a circular economy purchasing department, so it's fascinating to see who's doing what across this system. Megan mentioned specifications. Again, it makes it easy for staff. You're going out to look for carpeting, furniture, things like that. How can we give you blessed text language that you can put in a request for proposal and say, we want these green cleaning products to meet this third-party certification or meet these certain standards. And this keeps improving. And so there's more and more of these coming out over time. Again, fact sheets. So you've got somebody on staff that needs to outfit the new fire station. Can the purchasing folks say, here, go to this site, read these 3 fact sheets. It'll help inform you as you start thinking about putting together your bid sheet. These are just examples of some of the fact sheets. PFAS has been a big deal in Michigan. The state of Michigan has banned it from purchasing by state agencies. Lots of discussion about how does this save money? And there's lots of good examples. I was talking with Kent when I was at the city. My colleague Dave was the energy guy, and we were super early LED light retrofitters. And, I thought, well, of course, we're going from a 120 watt bulb to a 12 watt bulb. It's a no brainer. We're saving all kinds of energy. And it turns out when you look at the full life cycle cost of a LED streetlight, we calculated it's $88 to change a light bulb with 2 union staff and a lift truck. And if you can do that once every 20 years instead of once every year, it kind of doesn't matter what that lamp costs. You're just saving a huge amount of money, and you can put that staff doing something else. And our workman's comp insurance went down. So, you want to look at those full suite of benefits in the life cycle in any of your purchasing. So with that, we've got sample language. If you are doing solid waste plans in a community, if you're doing resilience plans, sustainable purchasing really fits in all of those. And if you can squeeze it in as a recommendation, it's then built into the plan, and you can point to it and say, hey, don't you forget, we said we were going to develop a sustainable purchasing policy. So with that, again, new trainings being beta tested. It's about an hour long. Should be the kind of thing staff can take, at home on their computer, and make it easy when you've got 150 staff with P cards and you're trying to figure out, great, I've got a new policy, but how do I get everyone trained? So with that, I'm again give credit to Tracy and Tanya for all their good work. My email's here, Tracy's is there, Kent knows how to reach us, and I am happy to answer any questions. Oh, the one thing I'll add is in terms of recycled content, I do a lot of work in Michigan. We do a gap analysis for the state. And Michigan buries 6.8 million tons of material that could be recycled. And we calculate that if we hit the 45% diversion target, it adds $9 billion in labor income, which is what tourism does for the state of Michigan. So it's not just about being green. There's this huge economic part of this. Um, the other thing I learned is we have some major bottlers here in the state of Michigan. And we found out that despite us having all this material, they're buying recycled content from California and Australia because we're not making what they need to make their products that their clients are demanding. So um, there's just this real disconnect. And so, as you know, Heidi so elegantly said, with circular economy and closing the loop, the sustainable purchasing can help with the demand and really sending that signal to the market. So I'm going to stop sharing and again, welcome any questions or happy to talk to folks later on.
Thank you so much, Matt. Very much appreciate all of the information, great resources again. And again, we'll have Matt's contact information. We'll pass that on to the group and have, you have the opportunity to reach out to him directly. There is, Matt, one question in the chat, Matt, and I think in consideration of time here, I want to move on to Kim, but if you could go into the chat, and Dale with First Star has a question there about recommendations for state legislation to encourage agencies to make purchasing decisions, foster development of a circular economy. If you could answer that in the chat or address that in some way, we'll move on, but then everybody can pick up that answer in the chat. So with that, we want to shift over to Kim Carroll Stewart, who is the executive director with the Nebraska Recycling Council. I've asked Kim to visit about kind of the recycling economics and specifically a tool that they have with some toolkits here in Nebraska that allow municipalities to kind of look at that economic impact of recycling versus landfilling, et cetera. So Kim, you should be able to share your screen. Yes, it is. And take it away.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction, Kent. And thanks everyone else. I'm going kind of behind some really great folks here, so it's nice to be kind of involved and at the same level with everyone here. Some of my stuff will kind of be maybe tapping back on some of that collaboration, some of the systems. Matthew started to hit on some of the non-market evaluation and true cost, so true unrealized sometimes costs. And so I've added some of that into my slides, and then again, we'll end with the resource that we had published here at the end of 2024. So we'll be doing some updates to that in the near future. But just to introduce ourselves, I think I kind of looked through who all is in the call today. Most of you probably know us, but we are the Nebraska Recycling Council. So we are a statewide member-based nonprofit organization. And so maybe hitting a little bit on what Matt said, philanthropy is really important. And so our membership does help fund a lot of our programs. So if anyone on the call, I do see a lot of our members here. But if anyone on the call is interested in membership, once the slides go out, there's a link in the slides, but also just reach out directly to me. I'm always happy to have those conversations on what our membership looks like and what we can offer, and how we can kind of support. I really like partnership better than membership. Most of our members do end up being true partners, and we work with each other a lot. We do have our impact map here. This is from 2025. So just this past year, she's really showing our kind of statewide reach. We try to make sure that we are kind of listening and getting everyone across our state. I know sometimes it's a little bit easier. We are located in Lincoln. And so we have a lot of Lincoln and Omaha partners and friends, but we do also work and advocate for the western part of our state as well. Our mission is really to maximize both the economic and environmental benefit of resource recovery in Nebraska. And so again, thinking about true sustainability. So if you've ever heard like the triple bottom line or people, planet, profit, we are really looking at both economic and environmental aspects of this. We really envision a future where all materials are reserved for their best and highest use. And then landfill is really the last resort. We do that through really kind of four major areas. So technical assistance, and this really runs the spectrum between community members, just the citizen of Nebraska, all the way up to working with our state, municipality, city kind of partner and government. We also do our own kind of research and data collection, as well as support other initiatives in that, support advocacy and legislative action, and then finally through education and events, so kind of presentations like today. We really run our kind of whole thing. So the lens that shapes all of our work is really through this waste hierarchy, or the waste hierarchy kind of upside down triangle. Really work in the recycling and composting space, but advocate for source reduction and reuse, repair, kind of all the other R's. But then again, down the kind of upside down pyramid here, that least preferred option. So kind of talking about the true cost of landfilling. Again, going back to the economic and environmental value of staying higher up in that hierarchy. So treatment and disposal are really going to be considered end of life. So this is where we lose any value that would be left. It's either getting buried or burned. In some ways, depending on the treatment. There's other kind of options that fall into those that aren't quite as clear cut as those two categories. And then we do have energy recovery a little different because there is some value recoup. But again, you're losing the value of the material it intrinsically holds. And so shifting kind of a little bit away from who we are, what we do, and the lens that we frame our stuff for, really starting to talk about the costs. And so little slide, I kind of already gave permission to send these out so you can read these deeper. Not a complete list, but really trying to get the idea across of the true costs that should be considered. Also considering none of these are value statements, so this is not intrinsically or inherently good or bad, just kind of a way to look at and account for costs. And so the big level of this, really looking out, I think most of us have a really firm grasp on market costs or market evaluation. So operational costs, things that have an invoice, these are easy to see, easy to quantify. So these would be things like a tipping fee. So depending on what side you're on that might be an income or an outgoing cost, hauling fees, labor, acquisition of land, kind of site engineering, the kind of all the background stuff that goes into that. Depending on where you are, daily cover might have a cost associated with it. The lost revenue is in here. So this one's a little bit more, I would say, misplaced from what we generally think of, but there is a forfeited commodity value when we are burying things that could be used or reused. Thinking about post-closure, so that kind of 30-year mandate, regulatory compliance, and all of those things. The piece that I like to think about and focus on, and I have a little background in more of natural resources, is the non-market cost. So these are ways that we are quantifying society's willingness to avoid a damage or pay something differently. So some of these do have a hedonic value associated with them. So there's a proxy cost that we can put to this. Others are a little bit harder to measure, and there's different ways to measure those. So something like habitat destruction. There we go. Word was really struggling. There is a value of that land that has intrinsically, but there's also this value that people will assign to it. And so these are a little bit more, a little harder to measure, a little different, not always accounted for in our kind of our cost assessments. And thinking of those things. Again, some of them have like a hedonic proxy cost that we can put to that, but a lot of these are going to be things that are not easily measurable by a receipt or an invoice. So to be kind of fair, I kind of did the same thing with cost of recycling. I won't spend as much time on this. Again, not a complete list, but kind of putting some of these values and kind of really maybe a thought experiment of what the true cost really looks like. One of the ones I will call out on here is kind of putting that wish cycling nuanced cost. So kind of that hidden societal frustration of inefficiencies, both on the recycler side, but then also on the consumer side, the person who's putting something in the bin. There's a psychological cost of kind of the confusion in the system when things are not kind of harmonized or if they're getting different messaging. And so all of those do drive, one, our recycling system, but also the actual costs that we're ending up paying. If they've ever heard the phrase, there's no free lunch, right? Somebody is paying for it somewhere. Heidi kind of mentioned that with kind of thinking about what that true cost is. Somebody is going to be paying for it at some place. And then just kind of doing a little comparison here between recycling and landfilling. Obviously, there are other methods, just really focusing on the recycling and landfilling. Again, Kent will send these out, so you're more than welcome to read into each of these and dive a little bit deeper into them. Kind of switching a little bit, putting a number or a value or quantity on that. I pulled some information. If you've not seen this resource, I'll share it in the chat. I've also PDF and sent these over to Kent so he can share the full resource. The Recycling Materials Association, or REMA, does do a fairly regular update on their economic impact of recycling materials industry. So I went ahead and pulled the 2025 numbers for the United States as a whole, and my next slide will show just Nebraska. But putting a more of a market cost on this, I don't believe they really dive into the non-market evaluations, but 183.6 billion total economic impact in the U.S. And then from yeah, it switched to Nebraska. So my side looked really similar. It switched to Nebraska. I'm getting very close to that billion at 868 million in some change. And so just really thinking about how big of a number this industry is. And so this is a really an economic issue, and really framing it again through that lens. The last thing I'll put in here before I hop into our actual tool and toolkit, many of you were at this webinar, but we did just have this last month. So we had a chief economist from REMA, Emily Sanchez, partner with us in Conservation Nebraska, to really do a webinar on recycling markets and what those driving forces are, kind of talking a little bit of those interactions. I think it's really important that we think of this as a system. This is a system, and so there's all these different kind of intersecting, interconnecting. Again, why it's so important to be talking to all of these different pieces, all these different stakeholders, and really having that collaboration. We all have a lens at which we're viewing kind of the piece of this issue, and so once we get everyone around that table, we can kind of start to remove the blinders and see the full scope. So it is embedded in here, also on our website. Just wanted to call it out. Really great information. If anyone needs Emily's contact, happily to share that, and she will have a conversation with you offline as well. So to dive into one of our tools that we have here. So this again was published end of 2024. So we do know it has a couple updates that need to be made. There's some organizations that had name changes, some links changed. And so we'll be doing some updating on this, likely 27. We are out of hard copies, but we'll be printing some new ones once we get that update done. So if anyone does want to request a hard copy, let me know towards the end of the year, and we'll kind of just account for how many we print for that when we do an update on it. I personally do like to look at it online. So if hopefully I shared this correctly. Can you see that different screen? Did that change, or am I on? Perfect. Yes.
Yeah, I think you've got a different screen there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can download it directly from our website here. You just click download. I like to interact with it this way just because we did build in a kind of clickable menu here. And so this guide is really kind of how to use it, I suppose. You could read it cover to cover. It does have a lot of really great information. There's some really good stuff at the beginning of it. We've been really using it on our staff as a kind of a way to train and really get introduced. If you are already recycling or you're already kind of doing it, the way that I like to use it is kind of just hopping directly to the area that you want to look at. So I know biochar, I'll use that as an example. We've gotten a lot of requests, a lot of interest in biochar recently, so it can just hop directly right to the biochar unit and kind of jump in. Again, lots of great links. We do know there's a couple that we are updating. Most of these are working still. But if you do come across something, please just reach out, let us know that there's something it's not working right or needs to be updated. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. So again, table of contents. One of the pages I will call out here is the roadmap. So this is a really great one. When we have somebody reach out to us that is either I would say concerned citizen or a citizen that's interested in taking this to their local city council. If we do have a local government, local city reach out, this is where we kind of start if you've don't have a program active. So if you're not doing composting right now, you're not doing recycling right now, really start on this page. It's right at the front of the book. And it really kind of just gives a step-by-step, 6 steps, really where to start, and how to really get something starting. So really going back to that first collaboration piece, identifying those key stakeholders, who needs to be in the room, who do we need to talk to, what are your goals up front? You can't measure success if you didn't set the goal from the beginning. And so really getting down, are you trying to divert a certain percentage from your landfill? Are you just trying to add a new material? Really what is that goal, and getting really solid and clear on that, and so that you're communicating that out to all your partners. And then you can figure out a little bit of who to bring into that room as well. And so really just working through this. And so this is something we do walk through with some of our members, but we also will kind of provide this, and you can gladly do it on your own as well. And then the last piece of this that's partnered with this, linked on the last page of the spreadsheet here, and link is in both the document and then also in the slides, is a community exercise. So really starting to get a handle on what you're spending right now. Sometimes I think we get so into our space that we kind of start to forget all the different components that is on this. And so a little bit of, again, maybe a thought experiment, you could think of it that way, of going through and really starting to list out, what are we actually costing? So what are those realized costs? What are those things that have an invoice associated with them? And what does that look like for landfill? And then we can either do, if you're doing a little bit of the recycling or you're kind of in that space, we can look at that comparable value. Or you can use this as that thought experiment and say, what would these costs be if we start a recycling program? What is that offset? If we have a goal, maybe we have a goal of so many tons of a plastic out of the landfill. So we can subtract that from that landfill column and we can start looking at those differences. And so really thinking about the economy of it. And so making those numbers make sense. Maybe that helps you set some of your goals. Maybe you can look at that and say, we would need to do X amount of glass needs to be recouped to make this viable for us. And so we can really start to structure it. You can take that then to the kind of the decision makers if you're not the decision maker. But just allowing, and this is interactive. So when you go to the book and go to the guide, it'll be request a copy or make a copy of it. It's in a view only mode right now. But view only also has the warm model, if you're familiar with that, from the EPA embedded in the same spreadsheet. And so that'll give you some other offsets. Sometimes people like to look at the carbon equivalencies. And so you can kind of work through each slideshow or each tab on the spreadsheet and kind of work through those different stages. So really helpful for someone starting out if you're kind of new to the space or looking at it or adding something. But also I think a really great exercise for the folks that have been doing this for a long time. And want to kind of optimize. So you can really use it at any level. And again, always happy to walk through that with you if that's of interest and you want to get a little bit deeper dive into it, just reach out to us. Any of our staff are happy to hop on a call or kind of walk out. If you're near us, we'll come out for a visit and chat in person. So with that, I know I'm getting close to time here. I'll add some information just to get in touch. My email is directly at the top. We have an info email, so if you're trying to just ask a general question, send it there. We'll route it. Website, phone numbers there. We have profiles on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We post fairly regularly. Newsletter is a QR code. Feel free, sign up. That's anyone can be. You don't have to be a member to get that. And so just sign up for our newsletter. We send out a lot of information. If you are one of our members or partners and you want us to put something in there, always shoot that to us. We try to send it out the first Monday of each month. And so if you have something that you want to have advertised, always happy to do that. And the last thing that I added, and then we'll pause here, is we do have a conference coming up in September. So I just added this slide like maybe 20 minutes ago. I completely kind of slipped my mind on it. But we will be ending our early bird at the end of this month. And so if you would love to attend, we would love to have you there. Early bird ends at the end of the month. The code is there. The link is there. And it'll be at the Cornhusker Marriott here in Lincoln on the 16th. We will also have a networking event the night before. You do not need to attend a conference to attend the networking event. They're kind of two separate things, but we would love to see you at both of them. So with that, I will stop my screen here. And then if there's any questions, I can hop into the chat. I'll probably share a bunch of links here for everyone.
Okay, super. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
Great information. And I know there's maybe a couple of comments in there. I also wanted to kind of back up. Dale had a couple of other questions, and Matt has gone in the chat and added a couple of resources there. So I would encourage you to check those out. And Kim, I guess the one question that maybe I'll throw out there in one of your slides, you kind of had some comparisons on kind of the non-market costs, and one of them jumps out to me. The fact that I'm kind of putting my planning and zoning hat on is the kind of the old NIMBY issue where someone who, and I'll use composting as the example. So I don't want a compost facility in my backyard. And so, well, why not? Oh, well, it's going to decrease my property values, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's, and maybe if you could go in the chat and just kind of maybe throw some comments in there about how do we address the NIMBY issue when we if we want to divert some organics, for example, and composting is an item here in Nebraska where we're looking at that as a potential source of material that can go on ag fields, et cetera, to reduce our dependence on nitrate fertilizers, which is contributing to nitrate groundwater pollution. So, there's some interactions here with planning and zoning and so on. So how do we start addressing the NIMBY issue and that aspect? So I'm going to leave you to the chat to maybe throw some thoughts in there. With that, I did want to move on to our next speaker, who I passed Dale Goebbels to with First Star Fiber to comment and provide an update on a pending economic summit, which is scheduled for September 24th here in Omaha. And very happy that we're going to have Heidi coming into town to talk and facilitate some of that. And Kim, I believe, is going to be part of that as well. We're going to twist a few other arms to get some folks in the room. We're going to be talking about economic development. How can we further economic development in Nebraska and the region and take advantage of some of those materials that we are now diverting? How can we get some economic value out of those and develop those end markets? Really kind of the whole thing that we've been talking about today. So with that, Dale, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you would just jump on and give us a update on what's going on September 24th and kind of what people should be looking for.
Sure. Well, thanks, Kent. As Kent said, it's going to be September 24th. That's a Thursday. It's going to be held at the Henry Doorly Zoo. They've been kind enough to give us a conference room that hopefully will not be that will be distracted by the animals, but there will also be an opportunity to tour some of the zoo afterwards and the actually behind the cage, if you will, some of the tours. So it'll be a lot of fun just on that alone. But the primary thing, and today's call was just perfect setup for what we have in mind for September. We'd like to do a deep dive into what is probably one of the most important elements of what recycling means here in Nebraska, because we know that we have kind of lagged behind much of the country and certainly some of our surrounding states that have passed EPR legislation. Now that we have Minnesota on one side and Colorado on the other, and there's been conversations in some of the other states around us as well. And while we've made some headways with the batteries, which is a perfect segue, if you will, but as Kent would be first to point out, and in fact, our conversation about this economic summit kind of stemmed from a morning coffee that the two of us had about EPR batteries was sold mostly because of the safety issue, which is great. But the economic issue was probably just something that didn't get as much play because our state, as I think we all recognize, has some funding issues going on right now with property taxes and other things. So bringing up anything that would suggest that recycling should be more prominent without talking about the underlying causes of why are we lagging behind much of the country. And if we are honest with ourselves, it's largely because of our low population. We don't have near the end markets locally that others in Michigan and the Northeast even have, and certainly California is probably lacking some as well, but they do have export. we lack a lot of that. So all of our, not all, but most of our material is going to be on average traveling 500 miles to get to an end market. And that's from Omaha. So you can imagine what it's like from other parts of the state. So the conversation that Heidi led off with the point about sustainable funding, that's going to be part of our deep dive. But the realities, as I said, we're looking at it from a totally a market development point of view. And we managed to attract some folks outside of Nebraska that can help with this issue as well. And we know it's of keen interest to the various brand companies who are dealing with EPR and other legislation nationally. So part of our uh, co-sponsors on this now has grown to include the U.S. Plastic Pack, which is a representative of its members include MRFs and First Star is one of its members, but also their primary members are the brands such as major corporations whose packaging is the focus of a lot of the EPR legislation. So, and we're very fortunate that, again, a shout out to you, Heidi. I'm so appreciative that Kent and your sources of some funding there were able to have you come as a keynote speaker and just telling some of the brands that you're going to be here, I think has piqued their interest as well. So that's great. Um, we have other details that we're still working through. We've got a room that's large enough for about 100 people, but there will be an additional cost in some of this. So we have to finalize just what we're going to be charging, but we want to keep it low. And in any respect, what we also want to do, and this is why I opened this up also for this could be a part of a discussion, I'm sure, amongst those of us who definitely will be at the NRC conference the week before. Um, but I would suggest that anyone who has challenged getting to Omaha for this, we would welcome your comments because at the end of the day, all of us, and by all of us, I mean Kent, uh, Crystal Bayless, who used to be a Nebraskan, who's now running the U.S. Plastic Pack, and Kate Bailey from the Association of Plastic Recyclers. Um, we and Conservation Nebraska and Sophia, thank you for joining today. Um, we would all like to walk away from the meeting on the 24th with several key objectives met. The primary one being, again, we want to come up with ideas, consensus, collaborations on how policies and legislation can help create the end market that we need in the state. And part of that, we recognize too, the effort that we're trying to attract people to this includes people who generally do not come to the recycling conferences. And I've been coming to them for a long time, but trying to get chambers of commerce, economic developers. Ben, I'm pleased to see that you're on today's call because we need folks whose livelihood and their focus is entirely on how to help businesses develop end markets and use secondary materials. And so our conversations on the 24th are going to be all around, okay, what are policies that could help everyone? What are some of the impediments that our state doesn't fully appreciate or recognize that it's been an impend it um, you know, uh, does not help recycling as much. And Matt, I appreciate your being on the call today because you recognize and you're supporting what could be our biggest customer for a lot of the materials that otherwise are being landfilled. And when I saw the over $1 trillion of purchasing power, those are the types of things that we want to talk about and really delve into on the 24th. Um, that's about all I have. I could talk for a lot longer, but again, be a deep dive on the 24th. I look forward to talking more about that with everyone then.
Great. Thank you, Dale. I appreciate that update. And yes, there's going to be lots of additional conversation and collaboration leading up to this. And and even I will say, even though the word plastics was in your presentation there, um, this is not just about plastics. This is about end markets for all types of materials. So I guess don't be misled by the fact that the word plastics was used a couple times when Dale was talking. The other thing I would say is that if you go back to 2023 when the legislature had a resolution, interim study resolution, LR 163, which was championed by Senator Hughes, and that specifically called out what can we do to advance recycling in Nebraska and particularly gaining economic value out of that. And that's a key component, as I said at the outset, of our integrated solid waste management plan here in the Omaha Metro. But it is also a key recommendation in that LR 163 study. So this is all kind of coalescing around things that have already been said, but also, we've got lots of challenges here. And we're also located in the middle of the country where, there's some certain advantages to that too. So looking at all of those types of things. So with that, I did want to just kind of throw out for everyone, there are some things that got put in the chat. Jim Tyler with the City of Omaha Public Works had put a question in there, and thank you to everyone who responded to that. Heidi, Megan, Matt, I think all of you maybe, and Kim, I think all of you maybe put some stuff in there in response to that. So thank you very much. I'm just, before we move on, I wanted to just check and make sure that I didn't see any other questions in the chat, but this has been great conversation and great information from all of our speakers today. I wanted to say thank you to Heidi, Megan, Matt, and Kim, and then to Dale for the information that you presented today. Do we have anybody that wants to come off mute and just ask a final question before we move on?
Hey, Kent, will Dale put something up for where to register for the 24th of September, or where can we find that?
Yeah, we'll be getting out in the next couple of weeks. Again, this has been pretty much Kent and Dale, and now with others, we'll have help from Sophia at Conservation Nebraska to get out some invitations and where to go ahead and register. Appreciate the question.
Eric Marshall from Hillside Solutions posed a question, and basically, what kind of legislative language do we need to work on in Nebraska to get tax credits for businesses that include recycling, environmental stewardship as part of their building cost centers, et cetera? So one of the conversations that we are trying to push here is the fact that we have kind of regulatory folks that that maybe have some grant monies that potentially are available that perhaps could be leveraged with the folks on the economic development side. And so I think, and maybe this goes back to maybe a conversation I had a few weeks ago with Matt and Megan, talking about how do you get kind of the regulatory folks or the folks that have maybe some money over here to talk to the folks who have the economic incentives and so on. And so those are two groups that don't necessarily on a day-to-day basis talk to each other. So how do we maybe take advantage of those kinds of things and resources that we already really have? They're just different resources in different kind of areas, and we're not necessarily making the connection. So again, collaboration. If we can identify who to have at the table, then we can start having some more robust conversations about that. And what are those opportunities? So before we move on to kind of the rest of the agenda here, I wanted to give a chance for anybody who wants to hop on to ask a final question. And I would also then say to Kim, Matt, Megan, and if Heidi is still on, do you have any kind of closing comments that you'd like to make?
I have one, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead, Heidi.
So I got into this because, one, I hate waste, but two, I think government and systems should work. And our systems in this space have evolved over 100 years to be sanitation, where we purely whisk things away and keep us so we don't have rats running the streets. But we really didn't evolve well. We kind of evolved in silos on how to deal with what was coming at us as it got more and more complicated over the last 100 years. So I think it's time for a reset. The public doesn't trust the system anymore. We have to earn it back. And the only way we're going to earn it back is to have the truthful labeling, have producers design things so that we can actually do something with it at end of life, to have the conversations that we're having today together. How can you throw me something that I can catch? And be successful where no one is harmed, where we're all working together and not trying to just extort more out of somebody else. If we don't get out of that mindset of just, I'm going to win and you're going to lose, we're all going to lose. And I really hope everybody gets to that mindset of we can all win, we can do this. If we can put people on the moon, we can certainly figure out how to recycle on this planet. So I really appreciate the time today. And I thank you very much, Kent, for having me. And I hope to see you on one of our calls soon. And I'll see you on the 24th.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. Megan, Matt, Kim, any final words you'd like to offer?
I will say I know this is one, I'm just gonna kind of reiterate what you said about the economic development, especially for those who are in the for-profit space. They have funding that is kind of set aside just for profit businesses, especially around innovation and creating new solutions. And so it's not something that I think our recyclers have thought about in that way before, but that fund is there. And so, I mean, utilize it. And I think I have a direct contact to someone who runs those programs. So again, just shoot me a quick email. I'm happy to connect any of our for-profit business folks to them. Like, again, very much targeted, but I think maybe that's the pathway into getting these two people talking, is getting some of our industry that's here, utilizing those funds so they can see it in that lens of economy. It's almost like one department sees it as the environment, one department sees it as economic, and they need to cross paths because it really should be about both kind of working hand in hand. But yeah.
Super. Thanks, Kim. Matt or Megan, any final words you'd like to add?
Megan?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm also just happy to connect to anyone if you want to connect to any of our states, happy to put you in touch with them, hear about their process experience, best practices, challenges, etc. You name it. Massachusetts also has a market development, economic development program and rapport with that agency. So they have experience working with them. And yeah, I mean, as far as the sustainable, back to that as well. We also have a lot of good examples in some of the other states. So happy.
Super. Thanks. Matt, final word?
Yeah, just my experience is, it's a long game trying to get local economic, state economic development people to pay attention to circularity. It's just not something they've and with a lot of hand holding and some good examples of, hey, these are way cool companies that want to be in Michigan if we can set it up right for them. My last good example is it took like 5 years to get our big investor-owned utility on board in our next cycle circular economy partnership in Michigan. And they just put up a $10,000 challenge prize for the best team that could help them figure out a way to recycle wind turbine blades. But that's the kind of economic development. I mean, it should have an extra zero on it, but it's a start. And so, I think it's a sign of good things to come. But our state and environmental group has had to invest a bunch of money in kind of hand holding with communities to kind of get there. So, I think that's again where EPR helps generate some of that funding to build those markets and educate the community. So thanks for having me. Really appreciate all the conversation today.
Thank you, Matt. And again, a thank you to all of our presenters today. I will offer to all of you, if you have some additional resources or some things that you'd like me to pass along to our working group, please pass those on to me. You can just shoot those to me offline. We've got great information that links that have been provided in the chat. I will try to regurgitate all of those in the meeting summary. Give me a couple of weeks to put all that stuff together, and I'll get that out to everybody. Again, thank you to all of our presenters. We will be, I believe, definitely chatting down the line. I'll have all their contact information for all the working group. Feel free to reach out to them. They're all great resource. They've got great stuff to share, and let's collaborate. Let's keep it going. So thanks again.
Thank you, Kent.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kent. Everybody have a great day.
You're welcome. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to try to figure out how to share my screen and go to, okay, can you see that okay? Oops. All right. I'm going to move a couple of things here so that I can operate this. Okay, and one of the things I want to do really quickly before we get to the Department of Water, Energy, and Environment update is to give a quick, I don't know if I can, I've got all this stuff in the way. There we go. Sorry about that. The Household Hazardous Waste Interlocal for the operation of Under the Sink Household Hazardous Waste Facility here in the Omaha Metro. We are coming up on the expiration of that interlocal agreement. We're working on a new one. And there was a group of our partners that met yesterday, and just wanted to give you a quick update on that. Basically, we were looking at potentially adding Washington and Cass County on as partners. We're not to the point where we're going to do that. We still want to have some conversations with them. We think there's some opportunities there to maybe expand our service area and so on. We are potentially going to add the Papio Natural Resource District to the agreement, and there's some good things that can happen there. But again, they will be considering that. That's not a final deal at all, but wanted just to give you a quick update on that and look for some more updates on that going forward. But we anticipate that the existing partners, which are the City of Omaha, Douglas County, and Sarpy County, will enter into a new interlocal agreement. Framework is very much the same as it has been. We're really, I think, the big change maybe is recognizing that we're going to have some new products that we're going to deal with. Initially, we're going to be dealing with more batteries, but through the Safe Battery Collection and Recycling Act, we're also going to get reimbursed for those costs. So as of January 2028, that new law will come into effect, and we'll have a stewardship organization that then will be funding that the collection of loose batteries, the small and medium format batteries across the state. After that, the big challenge is really the embedded batteries, devices that have embedded batteries like vapes and so on. So stay tuned for that. I think there's some exciting things on the forefront for that as well. With that, I wanted to switch over to the Department of Water, Energy, Environment. I know we have a number of folks. I'm looking at Doug right now. I don't know who with the department wants to go first, but there are a number of different things which are going on with the department, and always appreciate the fact that you're willing to come on and provide an update on a lot of the things that you guys are doing. So I'm going to kind of throw it open to whoever wants to jump in first. Doug, I see you are unmuted.
I
Go
am
ahead.
unmuted. Yes, I thought that yeah, great program so far. Thank you so much for including us, so we can listen in as well and learn from folks and then try to figure out how we can fit in. You kind of mentioned potential other funds from the government agencies. That's potentially Swiffer 2. Let me talk a little bit about Swiffer 1. I saw Jeff Phillips. He's online as well. SCS did a great job putting together the characterization study. They worked in the trenches with hot and cold and everything else that Nebraska could throw at them, but they still prevailed and got the study together for us. And so my information group and my IT team are currently right now trying to get it online so that everybody can have access to it today. So hopefully I'll be able to send you a link, Kent, soon, and then you could throw that out with everything else so that people could find the study. It might be on there later today, so you could check the website as well. We tried to put it trying to tweak it a little bit so that the old study is there and the new study. But our PIO is like worried that because one says waste characterization, this one says materials management, they're going to get confused. I'm like, well, I really want them to read the new one anyway. I don't. And Jeff, his team did a great job making comparisons between the two studies. So hopefully that'll generate some new conversation over the next month or so, or leading up to all those different great opportunities in September that are coming. So I think that's going to be out there for everybody. And SCS, what showed that there's a lot of opportunities for diversion. And so moving into I guess Swiffer 2 a little bit here. And you guys can give me questions at the end. I think I'm doing most of this except for maybe Dan LeMaistre or I think Jeff Edwards is online. They can do the Title 132 things. So the Swiffer 2, we put in our application with EPA. It's been approved. We're kind of working back and forth on the details of what we're doing. They're just looking for a few other things. Sarah said share a few things, but it's not all approved yet. So let's I'm trying to keep it a little bit semi-generic, if you will. So there's about 600,000 total in funding, and so we've talked to many folks, and the director kind of looked at us for ideas. And so the three things that we're going to focus on with the money. Oh, I should say that. Well, let me talk about the money. So end of life tire management planning is a big thing with Jesse Bradley, Director Bradley, and so he's been talking to lots of different folks in the industry and tire management. Seems to be some opportunities and things seem to be gelling in that side of the industry. So we're trying to do some planning, sustainable planning for the whole state, and trying to create and potentially implement a system that will manage tires better. I went camping I don't know, a few months back, and there were some birds I was looking at in the water, and it was just so pretty. And then all of a sudden I found tires on the bank on the other side, like, okay, we can't do this anymore. So that's one thing. So I got three things we're going to work on. So we're going to work on trying to find a contractor to help us put that together. Then we have a diversion economic analysis we want to do. Follows right in line with everything that's been discussed here. And so we're going to try to look, what that could look like. And so we've got some language in there. So, and we'll be able to put this, once EPA approves this, we'll be able to share the more details of what these plans are. But like I said, we're still kind of working on that. And so that'll hopefully, provide some actionable insights, into cost savings that you guys already are talking about, things that have been discussed for the last hour and a half. Revenue opportunities, job creation potential, which again, all mentioned. So what that could look like for the state, and that's something I think was near and dear to your heart, Kent. I think that was more your brainchild that I think you and Jim Tyler suggested we should focus on that a little bit. And then the last one was a sustainable materials management plan. And again, that's been in lots of other documents the state's put together. And that's going to, focus on, what type of education do we need to help folks understand, but creating the different, I don't know, mechanisms to help the public, but also figure out how to, again, incentivize the companies to build things. But Heidi went into so much of that. And it's going to take a long time to get this all fixed. Europe's been ahead of us, as she said, for decades, at making producers, and most of these companies are international companies. So, they know how to build the things. They just sell the things that aren't recyclable here because we don't make them. So anyway, so those are kind of the three things from the Swiffer 2. I guess I could take questions on any of that if you want, Ken, or I can talk briefly about One Red as well, whatever we want to do.
Why don't you go ahead and just give an update on One Red and
Okay.
if there's some other updates, and then we can kind of circle back and
to any of
take
it.
any questions.
Sounds great. So the One Red, so we've been working with EPA, the governor's office, and so that program is being reworked a little bit. We're going to move more money into the agricultural side for Nebraska. And so we had 8 programs. We're working on changing the work plan, so I can't really give out the details of that. But we still have to get that all through EPA. But so there'll be more money for that part of the program, and there'll be more money for our non-residential energy efficiencies. So a lot of businesses, so energy efficiency options. And so that's kind of where that's moving towards. We have the digester RFP that went out there, and so we only had one proposal come in, and so we're still considering what we're going to do with that, since we only have the one proposal for a digester in Norfolk. And then of course the weatherization program is still on the list of things that we're doing with the CPRG One Red programs. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of what's happening there. We're working hard. We did hire a contractor well, I guess it is July now. In May, we hired a contractor in May. And so we're hard at it with Jacobs Engineering, and trying to put together all of the different ag data bank to build a program and try to dole out. And then there's about probably $175 million will be out trying to incentivize producers to work and reduce nitrates. I think something you mentioned as well, Kent. That synthetic use, since the 1950s has just gone up and up and up, and we're kind of, reaping the disbenefits of all of that. And so there'll be some educational components, but providing incentives to producers to try to adopt more sustainable practices and hopefully encourage, the cover crops and reduce nitrogen use and water use as well. So because the governor's task force has also kind of come into play here on water use and nitrogen. And so we're trying to there's several goals that they have that the One Red program is trying to fold in to the design as well. And so we're trying, and there's a lot of greenhouse gas reduction and nitrogen reductions play hand in hand. I mean, so it's all very tied together. So I think that's probably all I have. Maybe a Title 132.
I'm on. I
Oh,
can,
Brian, thank you, Brian.
yeah, I
Yeah,
I can give
go
that
ahead,
if
Brian.
we're ready for that.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Give a quick update on 132 updates.
You bet. Thanks, Kent, and I want to thank you again for being able to give that presentation at your last quarterly meeting. That was helpful as part of the outreach process for Title 132. Yeah, we have proposed a rule update to Title 132, several areas, as I discussed at the last meeting. I like to describe Title 132, the official title is Integrated Solid Waste Management Regulations, but I describe it as supporting various landfill diversion activities such as recycling and composting while ensuring that land disposal of solid waste or other management of solid waste on the land occurs in the most environmentally protective manner possible, consistent with the requirements of federal law in this area being RCRA Subtitle D. We do that through the issuance of facility permits, the use of conditional exemptions from the permit requirement, and other solid waste management requirements. So that first hour and a half was great. And lots of, exciting things. And that's really not just the future, but the present, until kind of the producers, industry, policymakers catch up with the visionaries and the leaders that participate in these meetings. Title 132 still has an important place. And what it does is really protect groundwater, protect, land quality, and protect air quality anytime that solid waste is managed on or disposed on the land. When it's managed in buildings, it's typically exempted. But during that last presentation, we were kind of in the middle of the outreach process. Many of you participated in that or gave comments. It was really productive, appreciated all that interaction. Some of that was in person, some of that was online and in webinars. Appreciate all that engagement. We had like 150 people in one webinar, 75 in another, presented to SWANA, presented to your group, presented to some of our public power stakeholders on the coal combustion residuals portion of that, adopting the federal CCR regulations. And then we just had our rulemaking hearing before the Nebraska Environmental Quality Council a couple weeks ago on June 24th. Jim, I don't know if Jim is still on, Jim Tyler's an EQC member. He and the other members, were pleased to say, did adopt the rulemaking proposal. So we're very pleased and happy with that. We think it is a benefit to the public, benefit to all solid waste stakeholders in the state, clarifies things, protects the environment, gets us up to the federal standard for the management of coal ash from electric utilities. And now where things are at is they get reviewed by the Attorney General's office for constitutionality and conformance with the procedural requirements applicable to rulemaking. But I've done this a few times, and I don't imagine any speed bumps there. Get reviewed and approved by the governor too, hopefully. No surprises there either. And then they go on file with the Secretary of State. So can't predict a time frame for that. Sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's months, but that's where we're at. They take effect 5 days after filing with the Secretary of State, and we'll try to get out an email to everybody when that does happen. But we don't generally send one after the EQC adopts because they're not actually in legal effect yet until these subsequent stages of approval happen. And sometimes that confuses people. But the regs will go up on the agency webpage. They'll also be on the Secretary of State's webpage, and then that'll conclude the process. But thanks again to everybody, and to you especially, Kent, for letting me participate in these meetings and have some time to present the proposal.
Great. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Doug, for that update. I guess the one thing that always strikes me is the fact that, especially in urban areas, the public is totally disconnected from natural systems and kind of what's going on here. And I think, as Doug, as you pointed out, talking about one red, there's a lot of things are connected out there. And so if you can improve soil conditions through the addition of compost and just you're reducing the need for nitrate fertilizer. You have increased the soil's water holding capacity, so you've reduced stormwater runoff. And then you're conserving moisture. So you're hitting a lot of big things, and all of them have a common component, and that's water. And we simply can't exist as a species on this planet without clean water. And preaching to the choir with the group here, but a lot of folks are just disconnected. They come home, they drive in their garage, everything's automatic. Water comes out of the tap, flush the toilet, et cetera, et cetera. There's no connection with how this is impacting the environment. And there's a cost to that. And, we've kind of heard about those externalities, those extra costs that, we just don't think about. But that is costing us money. And especially at the local, state and local level, it costs us a lot of money. So, yeah, conversation for today, really kind of let's start looking more comprehensively, and let's look at the demand side of how we can start creating that, as Dale mentioned. How do we create the end markets? How do we start pulling stuff through the system? And the supply piece of it will catch up with demand, because that's the way supply and demand works. If you've got a lot of demand, then there'll be some changes on the supply side to react to that, and so on. So great conversation today. Folks at the Department of Water, Energy, and Environment, thank you very much. Pass on my thanks to your colleagues who are maybe not on the call, but I know you're doing some great work. Doug, thank you for the update on the waste characterization study. I know Jeff Phillips was on earlier, but I don't know if he's still on, but anxious to see that. There are a lot of people who are chomping at the bit to look at all the granular data there. So very excited to see that. We're close to getting that live and on your website. So with that, are there any questions from any of the attendees here for Doug or Brian with the department?
Excellent. Yeah. So my PIO, I saw she sent my note, all the documents. She does a web sketch of what she wants the website to look like. So it's been sent to IT. So it could happen today. Check tomorrow morning.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Jeff will be very excited.
Excellent.
I know I will be too.
Thanks much. I don't see any questions in chat. I don't see anybody unmuting to ask questions. So thanks again. If you have any, again, you know where to find me. Happy to pass on information out to folks. I know that we'll have, when I talked to Roll Anderson a couple of weeks ago, as things come out about the battery legislation, or excuse me, not the legislation, but the battery rules and regs associated with Safe Battery Collection and Recycling Act, there'll be a public information, or not public information, but a public comment period. And so we'll make sure that the group here knows about that, and we'll kind of help, and kind of in the same way that we helped you with the Title 132 outreach So happy to do that. And again, thank you for being on the call today, and always appreciate you providing the updates. Okay. That I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here. And the only thing I have really, I know on the agenda it says there's a couple of other updates. I'm going to put those for sake of time. I'm going to go ahead and put those things on the meeting summary. Kim, I know you're still on the call. Did you want to have a quick update on anything related to the voluntary battery collection network?
Not too much to update right now. We do have a few. I've been doing like a monthly touch base with about 18. It ended up being sites. As I right now that I know, no one has ordered yet. I do have two that are going to be ordering in the next couple of weeks. They just had a busy period. They had some stuff they were working on with their current population and current collection method. So hopefully the next one will actually have some stuff on the ground and running. I know I've talked to a few household hazardous waste facilities. If we do end up with some funding at the end, that it's not for the boxes, we can kind of move to a one drum just for the few that we have. That funding is available. We have it through kind of two different routes. So we'll get some stuff off the ground before the end of the year. But as of right now, we're kind of just sitting and waiting. Everyone did go through the training provided by the battery network that I know of. So all of that side of things went well. We're just kind of waiting on the ordering piece. So, but yeah, we'll update as stuff comes out. I've been doing weekly, or not weekly, it's a little aggressive, monthly follow-ups with them. But for our folks that are on from the state, if there's anything that you ever want kind of asked or included in a monthly update, I know I've talked to Roll about that. Just shoot it to me. I'm happy to add that in there and just have them kind of answer me. I can aggregate their stuff and then give them an answer to you if that works better. I know sometimes people get a little nervous replying directly to people for whatever reason, but I'm happy to be that go-between if that's of service to anyone. So.
Okay. Great, Kim. Thank you. One update I wanted to pass along. There's a group of us, namely, and I will point out names. Michael Duckworth and Kim and I specifically are actually going to be meeting tomorrow to kind of talk some next steps on a vape disposal pilot. And this is something that we've been kind of chatting and working on getting going for probably over a year now, but just again trying to take some strategic steps forward. The pilot is designed to kind of be with an initial school district initially, and to help them address the management of vapes that are being confiscated. And it'll be modeled somewhat after some other pilots around the country. Boulder, Colorado, there's a couple of counties in California that are doing it, some in Missouri, some in, I believe, New York. So, we're not inventing anything here, but there is a need. There's a lot of vape use that's continuing to increase, and a lot of it kind of is out of sight, but we've got devices that are not being managed correctly. And so from a public safety standpoint and from a health, really a health standpoint, getting these things managed correctly and giving folks the resources to, understand how they ought to be managing these devices is pretty critical. So that's in the works. You will hear more about that. I would imagine at the NRC conference, we'll be able to provide some good updates maybe on some of that as well. So that is all I have. I know we're coming up close on time here. Thank you very much. 2 hours sometimes can be a long time. We still have 24 individuals that are hanging on. I don't want to have you hang on any longer. Thank you so much for being with us today. I think we had some really good information, some good collaboration, and just excited about kind of moving this forward. With that, any other comments, questions, anything, updates from anyone that's still on the call?
I just appreciate everybody's work in all of this. So, and thank you,
Yeah,
Kent, for doing such a wonderful job at this with this meeting. It really kind of brings everybody together.
thank you. Happy to be the facilitator. Yeah, and bringing folks together in collaboration. That's kind of what it's all about. So look for a summary of the meeting coming from me. I will hopefully get that out within the next 2 weeks, hopefully sooner, but it'll have resources listed there. And again, it'll have all our presenters' contact information so you can reach out offline to them and talk to them directly. So with that, thanks again for your participation today. Um, Take care and have a great rest of the summer. We'll see you in October.